Hey everyone, Nico here, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at another game from Guardian Game Studio, and this time around a little bit different since this one's actually a 2D action platformer as opposed to the overhead 2D Zelda style perspective of the last two games that I covered. Now if you've watched my review of these two, you'll know that I really enjoyed them. They're not anything overly difficult. They're a little bit more on the casual side in that regard. But this time around, they decided to crank that difficulty way up, make it quite a bit unfair, and ultimately, I think, take away of some of the fun that this could have been. So, I'm going to dive into all of the good, all of the bad. But if you're interested in this game for yourself, whether that be a digital copy or even a physical copy, as you can see I have here, which is a really nice box. It does include the cartridge, which is red, and a small little manual. I'll have links in the description below. You can pre-order it on Kickstarter, or you can buy them after the fact on the Guardian Game Studio website. So links in the description below, as I always do with videos like this. But without further ado, let's dive into this bad boy. Now, in Soren Rising, you're going to take on the role of, surprise, surprise, Soren Walters, who's a little boy from a troubled family who's trying to shape himself into a revered warrior. So you're going to get story bits throughout the entirety of the game. So I'm not going to dive too much into it. But if you notice the title was the 5 Clans of Trisybra, you would know that this ties into some of the novels. Now, Guardian Game Studio does have a lot of different types of content that they tie in together, and this is part of that story that ties in with the novels and some other games, including the NES game Bloodshed, which we'll get to in the future. Now, when you first start out, you actually don't have any weapons at your disposal. You only have the ability to bounce on enemies and Goomba stomp them, and then you have like a Mega Man style slide you can use. But after only a few levels, you're gonna earn your first weapon, which is a spear. This one's a combination of melee and range, and it's the only one that's really like this. But you're gonna use this one weapon throughout the entirety of this first area. And the first area is really good and fun. Doesn't introduce a high level of challenge. It introduces you to all the gameplay mechanics that you're going to need to progress in this. And then eventually you're going to fight a boss at the end of this area. And that's going to be the case for all 6 of the different areas in the game. The first 5, each one is going to task you with learning and mastering a new weapon type. And then in the 6th area, you can use whichever weapon you want. Well, mostly. And we're going to get to that in a second. I thought one thing that they did that was really interesting here is the pixel art and the different environments. It does introduce some new mechanics later on. You're going to get like a Ryu Hayabusa style wall cling, and you can bounce between walls. You can also do this weird high jump after you are at the end of your Mega Man ground slide, but I never quite found a good time to use this, and there are a few instances where you can use this to collect coins, and the purpose of the coins are to heal, or later in the game you can buy 1-ups. That's it. Now, if you're wondering if you can grind coins by replaying the same level over and over, you actually can. It does save that you've picked up a coin in an area, and not actually save. This game doesn't have any sort of saving or password system. So it's a bit punishing, because what I want to tie this into is the fact that if you get a game over in this, you get an actual game over. There are no continues. You start the game with 5 lives. There are a few kind of scattered throughout the entirety of the game, but if you get a game over, you start all over again. And like I mentioned before in the introduction, this is a punishingly difficult game. And it is by no means a short game. There are 6 areas that have several levels each, and a boss fight at the end. So if you get stuck at any point in this game at one spot, you're gonna chew through probably 3, 4, or even 5 lives and get a game over just off that alone. And as someone that does enjoy a challenge, I think it misses the mark here, and it's way too difficult. And part of the reason it's so difficult is because of the controls. There are some times where it just feels a little janky. It's hard to show it because it's more of a thing you feel than you can see. But when you cling to walls and you let go, or when you jump and get hit, you get knocked back like it's Castlevania, it has a lot of punishing gameplay mechanics that are going to frustrate you. So I was able to beat the game, but I am not ashamed of the fact that I used save states in order to do so. Now, if you pick up a physical copy, this may not be an option for you depending on the hardware that you have. I played through this on the Retron 5 and I made a save state in between each and every level as I played through. That way, I was essentially giving myself a checkpoint. If I met my demise, I could just reload that checkpoint. I didn't quite save scum and save every time I passed a hard part, because a lot of levels have a lot of hard parts. There might be a bunch of enemies that are knocking you around. There might be a bunch of pits that you fall in, which are a one-hit death. I mean, there's a lot going on here that's gonna punish you. And the best way I can compare this game to something is Double Dragon 3 on the NES. Like, almost verbatim. And this isn't a beat 'em up, don't get me wrong, it's an action platformer. But the reason why I'm comparing it to that is because it has some wonky translation or typos at times. It has the unfair gameplay mechanics and just a brutal level of difficulty. It's got all those things from the NES era that you don't quite want in your games anymore. And then another thing I want to mention is that there is a heavy emphasis on the weapons, and some of them are a lot of fun to use. I enjoyed the spears in the first area. There's also a slingshot, which has like this arc projectile. And then the last one you're gonna acquire is a bow and arrow, which was my absolute favorite to use. But the problem is that you're mostly forced to use the weapon that you're given in an area, because you can't switch on the fly. Now, if you're thinking, oh, well, maybe you just press select and switch between your weapons you've earned, or maybe you press start and bring up an inventory screen. No, there's nothing like that. You want to know how you switch weapons? Yeah, you want to know? You got to go to the merchant and then switch there. And then you go into a level and you're stuck with that weapon for the entirety of the level. And that might not sound that bad, right? That might not sound that bad. But if you go into a level and you need a specific weapon, maybe to activate a switch, for example, guess what? You gotta exit the level, go to the merchant, switch to the one you know you need now, then come back, and then you can progress. And the melee weapons are just horrible feeling. They swing really slow, they don't do any more damage than the ranged weapons, or at least it didn't feel that way to me, and then you can proceed. The fact that you don't have an inventory screen to switch between your weapons means you're always forced into a specific weapon type, and it's pretty unlikely you're going to enjoy the melee weapons, because I think they're really poorly balanced and executed, as opposed to the ranged weapons, because of the types of enemies there are. They're way faster than your melee weapons are. They should have either been slower, or they should have had a damn inventory screen. But what I do know is it doesn't feel that good, and it ruined a lot of the game for me. But I digress. Most of the level designs are pretty good. The boss fights, again, are pretty good. There's a lot of variety there, and it challenges you for sure. I would not have had the patience to play through this all the way had it not been for me using save states, and I'm just being completely honest with you. I don't enjoy replaying large chunks of games over and over, and I don't think I would have gotten further than maybe the third or fourth area if I didn't use save states. That would have been where I consistently gamed over, because there are so many hard platforming sections. There's so many times where enemies hit me, it knocked me back, and I fell and it hit. There's a lot here that is really brutal. And if you enjoy a brutal level of difficulty, you're going to have a lot more fun with this than I did. If you don't like that, and you don't like a really high level of challenge, simply put, even with save states, this game is probably going to frustrate you. That's the best way I can put it. This is old school hard through and through. I don't want to make it seem like it's all bad though. There are a lot of fun moments in this. They come particularly from the first few areas. I would say the first 2.5 areas are a lot of fun. And then the last area is really well done as well, and that felt like the only point where I can actually use whichever weapon that I wanted. There was one level in the last area where I needed the staff, as I previously mentioned, so I had to leave, go get it, come back. But for the most part, you're going to be just going through. You have to complete pretty much all the levels because they're going to give you keys which unlock doors to proceed until eventually you defeat the end level boss and then continue on. The highlight of the game is definitely, I think, in the story, the pixel art, and definitely the music, which is really good. But the low points come in the controls at times, the design of the game and not being able to switch weapons on the fly, and also the unfair, punishing level of difficulty. So this is definitely one for those of you that like that old school hard. You want to master the game and really overcome it and find satisfaction in doing just that. But for those of you that are more accustomed to the older games from Guardian Games Studio, which are a little bit more middle of the road in terms of difficulty, I would say stick with those and maybe give this one a pass, because I think it's going to be way too challenging for most of you. Not having any continues whatsoever is kind of a baffling choice. Not being able to save or even have a password system is kind of a baffling choice. This is not a short game. 6 areas with 7 levels each took me quite a while to get through, especially when you factor in all the reloads I had to do with save states. Not afraid I had to use them. I was able to beat it. Did have some fun with it, but it was fun with an asterisk next to it. I hope you enjoyed this video of Soren Rising. It was a bit difficult for me to fully communicate just how this game made me feel, because I haven't covered a homebrew yet that I felt like absolutely brutalized me. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, maybe you're just not good at video games. Well, that's not true, because I'm sure I've beaten plenty of games that some of you have not beaten before. Have you beaten Ghosts and Goblins twice to get the actual ending? Have you beaten Castlevania on NES on 1 life? Can you beat Contra without the Konami code? If your answer is no to any of these, and this is not intended to be a weird flex, then understand you're going to struggle way more with this game than I did. But anyways, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, hit the bell icon and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and stay tuned, because I do still have 2 more games from Guardian Games Studio to cover. And Bloodshed on the NES actually does tie in to Soren Rising. And then we've got a beat 'em up, 2D side-scrolling beat 'em up on the Game Boy Color. So look forward to those. As always, I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you next time.